Hello and welcome to Creative Spirit Gathering. So glad to have you here, whether you are joining us in our Zoom room, and for those of you who watch later on the recording, we're grateful you're here. Your energy contributes so much to this program. So thank you in advance. And I also want to give an extra shout out to those of you who help to financially support our program. We're currently offering it on a donation basis, so anyone, regardless of their financial situation, can join in. And it is the donations of individuals like you that make that possible. So thank you so much from my heart. We'll share that information with you in the chat. You can always give online on our website, unityartsministry.org. Today, we are journaling with acrylic paint and a pen. And those are our primary tools. I'm going to give you some tips for those of you who popped in a little bit late for some other materials you could use that will give you similar effects. And we're also going to talk about why we're doing these effects today, kind of talking through a layering process. So we've been talking a little bit about the theme of light. So I thought this was a great image to start off with. Sunset, sunrise imagery always captures my heart. It always reminds me of that creative presence that is always there, that creative spirit that is always present with me in my life in so many different ways. And that idea of light, right? That light rising always just captures my heart. So it happens to be the cover of, this is the very first art journal I ever made. And it was back in, started in June of 2006, was this one here. And so I've, played around with lots of different materials in the book. The old gardening journal pages are still in here. Pens, colored pencils. There's so many different ways that you can explore in an art journal format. And each week I like to give you like a little glimpse of one thing that you can do. And then I also like to give you permission to not do the thing that I told you to do and do whatever you are feeling called to do. Because, some days we're just not feeling the mess, or some days we are needing the mess more than others. And some sort of structured drawing program or something just doesn't fill our hearts that day. So today I'm actually going to get a little bit messy. I'm planning to use my fingers as my painting tools. Again, you don't have to. You can use a brush. Anything you like. So light. Last week, we talked about the concept of that each one of us has our own unique light that we are shining out into the world. And we focused on just accepting that fact, accepting the awareness of our own light, and creating a little coloring page, so to speak, that focused on creating light itself, sort of that capture of light on the page. And so today I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the things in your life right now that are maybe holding you back from shining your light fully in the world. Because I know how bright and brilliant and glorious each one of you are, and the amazing gifts that everyone has to bring that are unique to you. And yet sometimes, we kind of, again, I love that analogy of the window. Like if I close the shades in my room's going to become dark, but it doesn't mean that the sun has gone anywhere, right? That sun, that light, and I'm going to say your light is still there, and it is shining incredibly bright and just waiting for those shades, those curtains to be drawn up so that you can shine more fully, whether it's in your creative life, your personal life, your connections with other people, a personal dream that you have that you're shooting for. I want you to know right now that it is 100% possible for you to achieve those dreams and those goals. And it's one step at a time. And one of the first biggest steps is having confidence in yourself and believing in the light that you are. So I want you to think about one aspect of your life where maybe you're feeling like that light isn't shining as brightly right now. I'm going to use the idea of creativity because sometimes as creatives, we all feel those times in our lives where we're not feeling as strong and confident in our art. We may notice the voice of an inner critic who's telling us that it's not perfect enough in some way. We may notice the voice of an old middle school teacher popping into our head saying that we can't draw, or a parent who one time said, you can never make a living as an artist. When we hear these things, they kind of get trapped somewhere, right, in our bodies. And it's work that we need to go back to time and time again, because they show up as those little inner critic voices within us. No matter how many times we say, shh, quiet, they're going to pop back up a little bit. So if you're noticing that those voices are popping up somewhere, some aspect of your life, today's a great day to jot it down on paper. Because what we're going to do is sort of a practice of release. When we take the time to acknowledge what is holding us back, what is blocking our light, then we can overcome it. When we continually ignore, and we just sort of shove it back there, we're like pulling those blinds tighter and tighter and making that area even harder to see into and to shine forward. So if we first take the time to write, just pen, write on the page, I've been noticing that, you know, that old voice from second grade keeps popping up, and just presence. What are the things that are coming up for you? I've done this so many times in my journal where I begin with writing, and you can see back here, there's this layer of black ink over purple paint. And what I've done is then go over that with an acrylic paint. And I use simple things like the fairly inexpensive ones that you can get at the craft stores. And oftentimes I will just spread it on, smear it with my hand, and start layering up. Because what that does, when I put the paint or something opaque, right? We could use crayons or oil pastels or tempera paints, putting something heavy over that text now sort of hides the text. But we took the time to acknowledge those feelings, those thoughts, those voices. And now we're saying, okay, but you don't have power over me in my life. I have choices, and right now is a fresh start for me. So we create something new on top of it, and we give ourselves that power to really let our light shine through and claim our light in the midst of whatever those things were that were going on, or those voices or those ideas that we've been holding on to. We can release them, and then we can affirm the truth of the power of our own light. So I went ahead and started writing down on a journal those inner critic voices. And I want to go ahead and share with you just a quick demonstration of, well, really how I make a mess, going from that awareness into, I'm trying to switch cameras, going from that awareness to moving into that next step, creating that layer of light on top of it. So you can see here, I've got my text, and you can also see I have some old, like, kind of scrap paper. And this is intentional because when I do paint in my journal, I tend to get a little messy and I go over the edges. So if you put some scrap paper behind your page, it keeps the other pages behind it from getting just like completely blocked off. I have someone here in the studio with me, and she is sharing with me what happens when you don't block those out. Our journals like stuck together. So you can see I just went ahead and squirted my craft paint directly on the page, and I'm going to smear it with my hands. And you can see how quickly that just starts to cover it up. And honestly, I can't even tell you how much joy I'm feeling right now seeing this like cotton candy pink over my worries and troubles. You also see I have a old rag here for wiping my fingers in between. Now, one of the main things, obviously, I'm not doing a full page at the moment. I'm going to be working on this alongside you when I set you free in your journals. But we can create layers. So while that color is still wet, I can add in other colors. I can add in white, and you can see that light starting to come through. I could start adding in some yellow and see how they start to blend. And I could do this, just going through, adding colors, creating textures with the paint. And again, focusing as I'm doing that on the fact that I am releasing those old beliefs and I'm now claiming my new ideas, my new beliefs of the strength, the power, the light that is within me. One final thing here. You'll notice that light often looks brighter when there's something dark nearby. So we see that in our lives all the time, right? It's like, I don't know if I'm strong enough to overcome this darkness. And then you see how much strength you have when you overcome it. And same thing in our journals and our artwork. When we add in a little bit of some darker colors, you'll start seeing those lights really shine through. So again, I'm going to be working on that. I've got sunset ideas in my mind to continue working into that. And I'm thinking today I'm going to be incorporating more imagery, some symbols, that idea again of the sun shining through, representing my own light. You don't need to work with symbols. You could just play around with the paint and see what comes forward. A lot of times for me, I'll start getting an affirmation, something that's repeating in my mind as I'm doing this process. And so I might write that at the top once it dries. So that when I flip open to this page later, that's what I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember that affirmation. I'm going to remember the brightness of that light and not all the things underneath it. But when we take the time to acknowledge the things that are holding us back, that are keeping us in the dark, then we free ourselves to release them. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just acknowledging this thing has sort of been on my mind and it's holding me back. Other times we might be called to do more work around it. We might have forgiveness work to do. We might need to meditate on it, spend more time in contemplation around the idea. The ideas in general is to trust your own intuition, trust your inner guidance, your inner spirit and wisdom, and let that be your guidance. And the art journal is a way to begin to presence that voice within you, the one that is telling you that you've got this, your dreams are possible, that your creative vision is possible, and that you are a brilliant, shining light. We're going to take this idea now into our meditation before we move into our art journal process. So I invite you just to take a moment to center your body. Take a deep breath here. We're in the center on the presence and the power of the light within to overcome any obstacle, to overcome any belief system, to overcome any challenge that has stood in your way in the past. Your light is beautiful and brilliant, powerful beyond measure. Let's breathe this truth into our heart space as we rest for a minute of silent contemplation. Breathing in and out into the silence. On the next breath, begin to bring our awareness back to our bodies. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Feel that light within radiating through you. As we open our eyes, we bring that light forward as we presence into our time of creative expression. I set you free. Go journal, create from your heart. Acknowledge exactly where you are and shine your light on the page. Hope you enjoy the process.